Welcome to the Practice Brave podcast. I am the host, Brianna Battles, founder of Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism and CEO of Everyday Battles. I'm a career strength and conditioning coach, entrepreneur, mom of 2 wild little boys, and a lifelong athlete. I believe that athleticism does not end when motherhood begins, and this podcast is dedicated to coaching you by providing meaningful conversations, insights, and interview topics related to fitness, mindset, parenting, and of course, all the nuances of pregnancy and postpartum. From expert interviews to engaging conversations and reflections, this podcast is your trustworthy, relatable resource for learning how to practice brave through every season in your life. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Practice Brave podcast. Today I'm here with Shanna Birchett, and we're going to be talking all about the sentiment of athleticism does not end when motherhood begins. Shanna is a runner, and she is an incredible runner. She has a lot of great content on social media. I'll have her share all of that information, but I think she's unlocked high levels of running after becoming a mother and has really kind of unlocked a lot of potential that I think it's going to be really inspiring for so many of us athlete moms to hear about your journey with running. So Shanna, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited. Definitely all about that motherhood journey. If we could talk about that and help other moms realize it's not over. So
it's not over. And so let's talk about that. How many kids do you have?
So I'm on the crazy end. I have 6. My oldest just turned 9 in November, and then my youngest turns 3 in like 5 days. So
yeah. So you knocked out a lot of babies back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
And in the midst of that, I guess, rediscovered running. So what is your background as an athlete? So give us some of that context as well.
Yeah. So I grew up running in the sport since around the age of 5 at a pretty competitive level. I did club running. We traveled all over the U.S. for USATF nationals. I was on a very competitive team. I loved it. It was honestly my sole identity as a child, to be honest. And then I went into high school, pretty competitive, already eyes on me. I grew up in California, Southern California, so that I feel like my district area, my county was very competitive as well. And then I had a little bit of a medical scare, my end of my freshman year, which kind of deterred some of my goals. And then, I guess I kind of went into my senior year, am I going to do this? Am I not? Do I still love this? Went into some college recruiting trips, and I just felt like it wasn't my route. So I kind of lost the sight of running for a while and got married really young, had a bunch of babies, as we know, very quickly. And I discovered running back again about 2022 is when I got back into it.
So all pretty recently. I want to rewind a little bit and talk about your experience as a high school athlete, because there's so many athlete moms that are now, I say, raising our little athlete babies, and this next generation of youth athletes, whether, of all different backgrounds, whether they do the same sports that we did growing up, or we're wanting to keep them involved in sports and keep them healthy. What was your experience like as competing at a really high level in high school and then experiencing a setback, which ultimately led to you deciding to take a step away from something that was such a big part of your life? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I always loved the sport. I really loved the idea of pushing myself and seeing where I could take it and what is my potential. I never felt like I could discover where my potential was, because it was just always growing, always progressing. But then when I had the medical scare, it was a lot of mental, coming back into the sport. When you are so competitive, you're used to just numbing all of those emotions internally and what's going on. And that's why it would cause me to pass out, and I would get back up and I would keep running, and then I would pass out. And so until they figured out a medication to help with that, it was just it was a very dark period. And then watching other people that you competed with, going into freshman year, and now all of a sudden they're exponentially way ahead of you, more advanced, hitting bigger times that you envisioned yourself hitting by your senior year, and you're not. It just became emotional, and it became almost I was losing myself. Like my sole identity was running. And so it was like, I had to discover who I was beyond that. And I knew stepping away from it was going to allow me that space to see like, hey, you are so much more than just a fast finish time. You know, there's a lot more in you that like makes you beyond just your running career. So
that's so important, I think, for us to hear as moms. And then for so many of us who can look back on and relate to that in our own athletic journeys. It is, I feel like it's so rare to make it through all of high school and all of college without significant levels of burnout or even just like hating the sport. Like I played through college, but there's not a single part of me that wants to be in a pool at all. And I played water polo, for example, for that context. Like I'm so done with that. I was so done by the time my senior year of college was there. I was ready to move on. And like you're saying, like unlock that new identity. And I think that's really hard for a lot of athletes. You know, some people ride it out for a really long time, but others just hit that wall where it's like, who am I outside of this sport? And that can be a really rough transition that we can all kind of either look back on or that we can anticipate when we support our own kids and what their athletic journey looks like. So I just wanted to like highlight that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Like, I think that's like my biggest fear as a mom, like, especially with 6 kids, like my kids don't run. Everybody assumes like, oh, I'm putting them in 5Ks and things like that. And I'm like, I'm so hesitant that because of how I grew up and like my own mental like frustrations with the sport at such an early age and just going through a lot of that emotionally, I'm like very like hands off with my kids when it comes to their sports. I'm like, whatever you want to do, I will pour into it. Like you have to, if you start something, you have to finish it. Like I make them finish the season out. There's no quitting in the middle of the season because they decide that they changed, you know, their desires. But I'm definitely not like they have to be runners. I don't care if they ever become a runner. Like I truly want them to just find themselves and know that like that's going to be where their happiness lies. And it's not going to be in some accolade of some temporal worldly thing. Like there's so much more about who they are. Like they are loved without the sport, you know?
Yes.
So yeah, I'm very slow with my kids and their sports. Like they have so much time. Like they truly do. I see so many adults right now, like that played soccer and then now they decided to become an adult runner and they're killing it, like absolutely destroying it out there. And I'm like, it's never too late. Like
no.
Athleticism is athleticism and it all translates to another sport. So
it really does. And I say like, we got to like just help our kids have exposure and have fun with it. And like, you know, become little well-rounded athletes and not even in the way of becoming a great athlete, but just having that exposure to a lot of different sports and environments and teammates and coaches. And all of that will ultimately coach them in how to pursue their own lifetime of athleticism. So it's not just like our individual efforts with what we're doing as moms, but also how we're guiding kids. It really feels like this full circle. I don't know. I think in my world and your world, if we are trying to pursue fitness and athleticism as a high level still, it really, I feel like it just really magnifies how that translates to our kids and how we're going to raise them in their sport experiences.
Yeah. And I feel like it teaches them so much discipline in so many aspects of life, like that they can do hard things, like they can accomplish things that like, or have to stick with something that they don't like, right? I feel like that teaches you a lot of value. Like there's going to be careers or jobs that they're going to have to do at some points in their life that they're going to dread it. They're going to hate it, but they have to still show up and do it, you know?
Right.
And so I love that sports do teach like my kids that. Like I have one kid that she changes her mind like every season. She's like, I want to go back to dance. No, I want to do karate. I want to do this. And I'm like, you can't do it all at once. So you got to pick 2 things, and I'm willing to pour that time into that, but you're going to see it through. Like, and so I think it's been really good for her because it's just taught her that like, hey, you don't just quit when things get hard, or you don't just quit when things get boring. That you have to like the mundane of life is what makes you successful, like in any aspect of life. Like it's what brings happiness. It's what brings joy. It's what brings foundation. And yeah, I just feel like, sports teach them so many good quality traits to carry like throughout their life. So
I agree. And it's good because it complements like what we're trying to do as parents, but in a way that like, it's easier to kind of get that buy-in where it's not just like us, like lecturing them or saying, well, this is what you should do. It's like it reinforces what we're trying to say and what we're trying to exemplify anyway. And I think it's just really positive when you can share like your own life experiences as an athlete or as a coach and you getting to the point where you're like, I burned myself out, or I was so injured and I lost my love. But also that doesn't have to be a forever reality. Like there's still potential to unlock. And it's like you said, it's not over. So I want to talk a little bit about that. What were you got married young, you knocked out having a lot of babies. What was that season of life like for you when you were like pregnant, postpartum, like on repeat for that period of time?
Yeah, I felt very lost. I felt lost, but I also felt found. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like every child brought like a part out of me, which I know any mom here that has 1 or 2 or 3 kids or more, they've gone through this where you have a child and it's like, it brings out a part of you that's like an area that you need to work on better. And then an area that you didn't even realize you had or could feel, like the depth of love that you didn't even know was possible for you to feel for a human being, you know? So I feel like each one of my kids taught me something different, but I also feel like I lost a little bit of myself with each kid too, where I was like investing so much in them and who they were, but then it was like trying to rediscover who I was with each child. And yeah, it was like this constant tug of war, you know? And I mean, at the time when I was going through all that, it was never a thought in my mind. I think I always had the hope that I could take my running to the next level that I always anticipated I was like capable of doing at a young age. But with each kid, it just felt like it was further and further and further away. Like, how many comeback stories do you hear of moms with 6 kids? Like, you don't really, like, they're very far and few between. And even like the elite level, like these are runners that have one, like, and no knock to them, but it's just a different relatability. And so when I had my 6th kid, I was like, that's it. Like, goals are out the door. We're not going to be doing anything with running. Like, it's over. Sayonara, you know?
Yeah. And were you like running it through those seasons? Like just sort of like for your own like mental escape?
Yeah.
Like so you were still running, but just not, I guess, as seriously.
Yes. Yeah. It was very like inconsistent. I actually discovered my love for strength training during that point. So in high school, like for females especially, like if you were a sprinter, you got taken to like the gym to do like strength training, but like endurance runners, it was like, just do some body weight. And it was like, no, that's why we're always injured all the time.
Right.
And so it was never like taught to me. Even my dad being a power lifter and a Marine, like he never like took me to the gym. Like I never had that exposure. And so after my first kid, I started doing like Insanity, like things like that, programs like Shaun T. Yeah. That was a huge thing at my point in my life. And I loved it. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm picking up more than 20-pound weights. Like, this is so cool. I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. Like, this is awesome. You know, I loved it. I fell in love with it. And it was like a whole different side of like the athletic side that I never discovered within myself. So I think I did a lot of strength training. I guess people would call that hybrid athletes at this point. I was more strength train based. And then very minimum running. Like I throw in running like once or twice a week, if even that. Like I would go sometimes weeks without running and just like tuck it in there because I just had missed like the high that I get from a run, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I was definitely more strength train based.
Yeah. And you know, it's so funny because I think the common thought, I think even still in a lot of circles is that like if you're an endurance runner, you don't want to lift because you don't want to put any mass on your body.
Yes.
Like, you want to stay like as lean as possible. But you're so right. Like that's why so many endurance athletes are injured all the time, is because they're under muscled or their tissues aren't as strong as they need to be in order to support their joints and all of that repetitive impact. So I think it's incredible that you were able to discover strength training through those seasons that ultimately has probably set you up to be a much more successful and healthy runner now.
No, absolutely. Like there's no way I would be able to carry the miles that I did or do 3 marathons in like a year and a month or something is what I did. Like there's no way. There's absolutely no way. Like it definitely laid the foundation and it played like a pivotal role in my life that I didn't even realize it was at the time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I tell like so many of my, like the professional runners that I work with, or just like my moms that love to run. Yeah. And like there is so much benefit to scaling back your running during pregnancy and in those early months postpartum and really focusing on that strength foundation, because it will make you a better runner. Like it's okay to take off time from running and it'll probably benefit you even more to not be changing your gait and to have that repetitive stress on your body, especially when your body just goes through so much with the pelvic floor and recovering from birth and just different pregnancies affecting you in different ways, it's okay to take a step back from running, introduce strength training, and then ultimately that's going to create a better package of an athlete on the other side.
Absolutely. Do you feel like moms, like, they shy away from that because they're afraid of looking masculine? Like, do you feel like that's a lot of like the issue of like what you're seeing? Like, because I always wonder that. I always like look back and I'm like, why did I never lift like 40 pound weights? Like, why was I so afraid? And now I love it. I'm like, what can I do next? Like, how can I bump
Totally.
this up? Like, am I allowed to lift heavier?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, like,
Yeah.
the endurance communities were like, I think with running and triathlon and all my endurance sports athletes, there's this belief system that like, that's what they want to do. They only want to run. They
Yeah.
only want to cycle. They only want to hike. They only want to ruck. Like, because that's what they enjoy doing. And strength training feels like a buzzkill. So I think that's one element is like, they don't want to, they feel like they have to stop doing one thing in order to add on to this other thing, or they don't have time because they rack up so many hours with their runs that they're doing. So I think that's one variable. And then yes, depending on like the generation you come from,
Yeah.
like it was really discouraged. It wasn't common for girls to be in the weight room 20-ish years ago, even 15 years ago. That's still within like the last decade to 15 years ago, where we've seen more of that buy-in with like strong being beautiful and encourage, and like strong is the new skinny, all of that stuff from
Yeah.
like 10, 15 years ago, when it got more popular to have like more muscle and to strength train. But I think when it's like moms in particular, the ones that I see that have a hard time stopping running is because during pregnancy or scaling back or wanting to scale back is because they think they're going to lose it. They think that if they stop, then they're going to like lose their capacity, lose their output, lose their miles. And like, runner brain, that's like a whole different level of athlete brain where it's like, oh, I got to run 0.3 more miles because I got to like cap it there, or I got to run, it's 57. I got to run to the top of the hour or whatever. It's like that continual push. So I think when you're sidelined in a way through pregnancy and postpartum, you don't want to like lose it. So there's that desperation to, well, I've got to keep up my mileage every week. I got to keep up this routine every week. And it's just really hard to be adaptable. But ultimately, what I have seen in the athletes I work with of all sports is like when you're really adaptable and willing to take a step back during pregnancy and rehabbing postpartum, you will have such a faster recovery and return to performance at a higher level than trying to maintain your abilities all the way through.
I believe it, honestly. Like, I absolutely believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're, I think, proof of that. And, we don't even like know each other that well, but just like what I have seen with your story is it is rare. And because like, again, having 6 kids is not just the physical toll it takes on your body, but your lifestyle as a mom of 6 kids is very different than say mine as a mom of 2 kids. It's just different. Like you have a different level of like what your body's been through and what your lifestyle is. And if you're willing to take a step back and now still be able to compete at a pretty high level, I think that says a lot for on kind of like honoring the season that you're in.
Yeah. And it's hard too. Like I totally get it. I mean, I went through so many phases where, it becomes hopeless, you're almost like, I really truly did. My 6th kid, I really believed, I was like, this is the nail to my coffin of my running dreams. Like I really truly believed that. And making like with her pregnancy, I didn't run a single time in her pregnancy that I can remember. So I was so cardiovascularly out of shape. Like it was ridiculous. And I think that's why I found like so much joy in strength training, because it just felt like I could still have that fix of like that high level athlete mentality of like, I'm going to go hard on this and it's going to feel good, but it doesn't require me to be cardiovascularly at a certain point to be able to hit that high,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's discouraging for sure to come back, but it is possible. Like that's one thing, if I could tell any woman, it's like, if you are patient, like you said, if you're patient and you just see yourself through the journey, allow your body to lead the way in that process, like you can come back. It's like muscle memory is truly a real thing. Like no way. Like I just believe it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And personal question, did you struggle at all like with your mental health or with your pelvic health during pregnancy and postpartum?
Definitely more so, I would say my mental health. Yeah, absolutely. Like I had postpartum depression. That's honestly why I started getting back into shape with my sixth kid, because I kind of could feel myself sinking into that postpartum depression again, losing like my identity of who I was, like as a personal level. And I never wanted like my kids to be like my sole like I never want that pressure on them to like feel like everything they do is like mine too, I want to have something outside of them so that they can experience their joys in life and whatever. But yeah, postpartum depression was a real struggle of mine, and I didn't even realize I had it until probably through my twins pregnancy, and then my last is when I really recognized it.
Yeah, and it's so hard to see like when you're in it, because you're just kind of in that survival mode. And if you're like an athlete and a high performing person, you just kind of like go into that autopilot of like pushing through and grinding through, and you're like, but this is what I want, this is what I need, and like this is the game plan. I want to have another baby, so we're just gonna kind of put our head down and like knock this out, because you almost like have this preconceived game plan of the life that you want, of the family you want, of what your routine is, and you don't even realize how much of survival mode you're in during those years where there is such a pause to like who you are. And then you come out of the fog and you're like, God, I was not okay.
No, for real.
I was so unwell, and I was just like pushing through it, but at what cost, And I think that cost comes in so many forms, whether it's like our ability to be present, or like quick to like, like the postpartum rage, or not being able to sleep, or like, or just, being like really depressed. Like it just comes in so many different forms. And it makes it really hard, because I think people think postpartum depression just means like you can't get off the couch. But I think it manifests in a lot of different ways, to the point where sometimes you don't even know until you're on the other side and you're like, oh, I kind of feel like myself again. I see the light a little bit. And it's tough to be in those seasons.
Yeah. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Like, I feel like when we go through the postpartum check out or check in or whatever with your OB, they give you like a questionnaire and they're like, are you depressed? And it's like, I'm not going to answer yes on that. Like, are you kidding me? Then I'm going to have people come to my house. Like, what is that going to look like? Like, is this going to be on my medical record for years, And so there's almost like a sense of shame for like admitting that you are struggling and you don't even know why. Like, you love the life that you have, you love your babies, but your hormones are out of whack and your body is like not your own anymore. And you're just going through so many changes so quickly, especially if you're having more than one pregnancy. Like I truly don't feel like myself until year 2 of postpartum. Like I will be honest, like I used to think it was year 1. Now my kid's almost 3 and I'm like, I'm now starting to feel like myself at year 3. I'm like, I just feel like the postpartum stuff is so vague. Like the 6-week comeback, you can get back into sports. That is so generalized and so probably far off from the truth for most women. Oh yeah. But I feel like I wish it was just more discussed. Like,
no, I absolutely agree. Because I feel like even if like maybe your weight goes back to what it was, or your body fat is less, you're still raising an infant. Like you're still nursing and feeding and like having really interrupted sleep. So it's like postpartum extends so far beyond the 6 weeks, like healing on like the internal healing. Your body is still remodeling. Your tissues take a long time to remodel and heal after each baby. And most of the time, and I believe you're one of them, by the time your body's even kind of starting to find a homeostasis again, you get pregnant and you go through it again. So it's like hit after hit after hit, where your body like never was truly able to find that new homeostasis of actually being healed. So yeah, I do agree with you. Like, I think most people don't start to feel like themselves again until, that 18 months to 2 years. Yeah. And that I think a lot of that has to do with the baby just getting older. You've adjusted, your body's had a little bit more time, and you've found a little bit more of a routine. Not that toddlers are easy, but it's just a different level of being needed than having an infant. You're just needed so much more when they're infants, and that kind of sidelines you. Yeah. And that's not a fun thing to say.
No, it's not, but it's truthful. And I almost wish like people gave more, like, I feel like it's more talked about now, like especially mental health. I felt like people are a lot more open, at least I see on social media, and that's very refreshing. But yeah, most of my years of motherhood, it felt like it was a shame. Like, if you can't handle your kids, like what's wrong with you?
Absolutely. Especially when you, like, I would assume with you having 6 kids, they're like well, then why are you having more
so many.
kids?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, everyone is just like on their own journey, and every kid and every pregnancy and every postpartum experience is just different. And it
Yeah.
is hard. And it's the sum of all of the different life variables that really influence those seasons.
Yeah.
So you, after your last baby, you were like, okay, I am unwell.
Yeah.
I need to feel like myself again. And is that when you started to turn up some of your running volume or intensity?
Yeah, so it was really just like trying to discover my body again at that point. So I just got back into strength training for another so I was 4 months postpartum. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into strength training, lose some of this baby weight because I had gained like a lot even postpartum. I was putting on weight. I just was in a depressed state,
Yeah.
And so I lost a ton of weight, and I was like, wow, I was like feeling confident again in myself and who I was, and trying to like figure out, okay, I could do this. I could do this whole mom of six thing, and still be who I used to be before I had this sixth baby. And then I discovered like this whole world on Instagram. I was like, there was like a running community on there. Like, this is normal for adults. Like, I thought this like whole coaching thing was like for college runners and below. And so, yeah, I ran with a couple moms in my neighborhood at the time. And that truly was probably my saving grace in that moment, is them just like, hey, we meet at 5:30 a.m. Like, come run with us. And it was scary because I was very out of shape, and they were pretty in good shape. They were marathoners and I wasn't. And and then through that, I discovered a coach and his mindset and mentality, and that you could be coached on a one-to-one basis and hit your goals. And each workout just like brought this like new hope and this dream that like, wow, maybe it's not over, and then you stack the seasons after seasons, and it becomes reality, and all of a sudden here you are, you're doing workouts that are faster than your high school self, and it feels surreal.
Yeah. And so did that like reignite the feeling that you had before your medical condition in high school, where you're like, I'm on a streak, I'm getting better, I have a coach who's invested in me? Like, did that just like kind of bring out that inner little girl?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like she was just like screaming to be acknowledged, that she had so much potential, but was always like there was a barrier and a barrier and a barrier. And it was like finally it was this door opening to allow her to chase this dream finally. And it was like, here we are, we're doing it. Like, and it's your time, and I think that's the biggest thing, is like to let moms know like your season and your time is going to look so different, and not to force it. Like, my season wasn't when my twins were newborns and I was breastfeeding them and I was in school and I was working full time. Like, there is no way I could have marathon trained then. Like, absolutely. Right. It just was not my season, and that's okay. Like, I feel like sometimes we can force things and wish for our path to come quicker. And the more that we do that, I feel like the worse it is. Like, there's so many opportunities for injury and just fatigue and chronic fatigue internally and externally. So yeah, like it's hard to embrace your season and where you're at, but like it's also okay to slow down at some points if that's what your season calls for,
That's so important for athletes and coaches to hear, because I think that we think, well, like, it's not over, like pregnancy, just listen to your body, postpartum, you'll get back, like you were working out before, you're working out through, you'll be back. And it's like, yeah, but like also my whole life has changed, and you can't even always anticipate the ways in which your life will change, in which your family dynamic changes, and the ways that you're needed. And again, it's not over, but it might look very different for some of those seasons of life before you're able to pour into yourself as fully as you can, like where you're able to unlock that potential. For me, it wasn't until my youngest was close to 3 when he started going to preschool a couple days a week. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have like three hours to myself for the first time in years, years, where I can go to a class time consistently. And like, for me, that was finding jujitsu later in life, so cool. And like doing that, but because I finally had that capacity to, and it's, I was working out in the garage, I was still doing stuff, but to be able to pour into yourself a little bit more, that is oftentimes just delayed when you're in those early seasons of motherhood, where your postpartum pregnancy again, it is hard to really tap into that full potential when you're in those seasons of back-to-back early motherhood.
No, yeah, I totally relate to that. Like, I already see the light at the end of the tunnel with like my twins. They go to kindergarten this fall full time, and then my youngest, she'll be in preschool like twice or three times a week, and I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what do I do with my time? Like, I'll have 2 or 3 hours by myself. Like, that's so weird.
I know it is. It is really weird, and I know like probably like some of the new moms are probably like, "Wait, what? That's so sad."
What is that going to happen? Yeah.
But you just kind of get used to it. And it's like that nap time hustle where you're just kind of like trying to, you figure it out. You figure out like what routine serves you during this season of life. And it's not an all or nothing. It doesn't have to be that way. Like there's still so much we can do where you can go on your runs, you can work out in the garage, you can maybe go to the gym, but being able to really tap into that potential, oftentimes that just gets pushed out a little bit because of the amount of mental, physical, and emotional demands that early motherhood requires. So on that note, talk to me about what this, like, I guess this butterfly effect of you being able to really like bloom and step into this new level of like unlocking that athlete that never really died in you. So tell me what that has been like. When did you get that inclination of, okay, actually I'm like kind of killing it and maybe maybe we're onto something here.
Yeah. So yeah, when I hopped on with my coach, he's like, his wife is like a 2:29 marathoner. He's coached her from a new runner to like, now she's on her 7th year running. So she's had insane progress, like obviously some major talent there too. But he was just very like, hey, like he saw potential in me, like my speed base. And, you know, I would see people talk about the longer distance and I'm like, maybe that's not for me. And then mine was like a little mix also too of like spirituality. Like I had finished a half marathon and I literally was driving home, no kids. I was just soaking in the moment. And all of a sudden I had this thought like, run a marathon and run it in this time. And I was like, absolutely effing not. Like it's not, I have no desire to run a marathon. It was never on my bucket list. Like it was not something I was interested in. And so I just kept pushing the thought off and it just got stronger and stronger and week after week. And then I was actually in mild training at the time with my coach. So doing speed. And I finally was just like, okay, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I had this experience and I need to tell you about it because I can't get it off my chest. And the moment I told him, he totally embraced it. And he was like, well, I guess we're rolling into base season so we can prepare you for a marathon. And so, yeah, that's what started it all. And then the more I did the training and I was hammering out 2-hour runs, which I've never done in my life, I was just like, wow, like I have the mental capacity to do this. Like, this is crazy. There's just so much of that, like the long endurance side that teaches you, like you have grit and stamina. Like, it's kind of like childbirth. Like you give childbirth, you're like, wow, I'm tough. Like, and I discovered that through my running, and that's kind of just where it all sparked, like just having a coach that saw bigger and was allowing me to dream bigger, even in my 30s, and saying it wasn't too late. Like that truly is what changed a lot of my perspective of like, hey, this is going to happen.
Isn't it wild, like how significant it is to have somebody else believe in you and then what that does to your brain chemistry? Like it almost like it forces you to say like, okay, wait, like if they believe in me, like I can believe in this, that I'm not too old, that I'm not too much of a mom, that that like we're washed up. Like that belief system goes a long way. And I know there's a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast, and I think it's really powerful to hear what a positive influence this coach has been on your life, because we have the power to breathe that life into our athletes, that there's no expiration date on being an athlete and unlocking new potential or unlocking just something new in general. And we have so much power with that belief system to instill in our athletes of all ages. It goes a long way, because I think we've traditionally thought that like, well, when you're done with high school or when you're done with college, like that's the end of being a female athlete. Yeah. And I mean, and that was what, like in school, there was no information for anything beyond maybe coaching 22-year-old females, 25-year-old females. And after that, it was like, well, they're not training anymore. They're not, that's not like, there's no athletes that are doing that. And obviously times have changed quite a bit, but you know, we're really dispelling those belief systems, and getting more coaches who can breathe that life into us goes such a long way. We all need that. We all need that. That little girl, she never dies. She still needs that belief.
Yeah. I think, like, honestly, I always tell people, I'm like, if you can afford a one-to-one coach, get one. Like that was the biggest turning point in like my running. It was like no longer away from like aimlessly just like throwing in a run here or there and overtraining. Like I would go back to my high school times too quickly, like, and I'd be like, why can't I get over 30 miles? But it's because I didn't know how to train myself. And so I feel like, yeah, if you can afford a coach, like what you guys are doing, like on a coaching basis is life changing. And not only for that athlete, but imagine the athletes that they are inspiring, like the moms that they're, or the dads that they're inspiring. Like, I can't tell you how many people have come to me and was like, hey, does your coach people like me? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, what do you mean? Like, but like, so like coaches change lives, like on one athlete ripples effect into another person. And so it's just like, I have so much respect for like what you guys do. And like, I'm grateful for what it's done for my life and my dreams. So,
well, thanks for saying that. I know that it's always helpful to hear that for the coaches, that because sometimes it is like a thankless job, because you're,
absolutely.
you're just like kind of grind. But yeah, we really do have the ability to like breathe life into athletes of all ages and show them that like it's not over, and then support them through these really significant seasons in their life that ultimately can set them up. I would say that like motherhood is such a catalyst. It is such a catalyst because it really forces you to like look at yourself and what you want and what you need, and re-examine your relationship with your body, with your fitness, with your mental health, and then say like, what can I do with these circumstances and the variables that I have now? And what can I do with that? And, for so many that there's just a lot of potential that we can still unlock. And especially if we're able to solicit the right support and resources.
Yeah, totally.
So with your coach, you started running, you started training, and you had never done a marathon before. What was the longest distance you had done?
A half marathon. Yeah. Okay. Race wise, a half marathon. Yeah. That was the furthest. The longest run I've done before that was like 14 miles. Okay. So yeah, it was like, that was a very foreign world for me. Like anything longer than that was like, what? People do that? Why?
Yeah, why? So then when was your first marathon, and then how did that go for you?
Yeah, so I started I started like base training, I want to say May of 2023. And then my marathon was in December. So we took a good amount of quality time to like build a base for 3 months. And then we built like a foundation for the marathon for like 3 months too. So yeah, it was about 6 months, 6 or 7 months total from start to finish for my first marathon.
Wow. And so you did the marathon, and what was that like for you?
It was a learning experience. Yeah, my coach was very like, this is where you're at, and in my head, I was like, well, I have this big goal, I wanted to go sub 250 on my first marathon. I was like, I could do it. I put out long runs. It translates, but he was like, yeah, but it's still a first time you're doing the distance. So just go out and have fun, enjoy it, race to your potential, but like, don't put any pressure on yourself. Yeah. And of course, I go out that first half of that race and I'm like balls to the walls thinking it's a half marathon distance, and I still have halfway to go. And it was a rude awakening, but it definitely left me feeling like I wanted more. Like I crossed that finish line. I was like, I still crossed 26.2 miles. Like, how did I do that? Right. And I want to do that again, So yeah, I came back.
So that like gave you the bug to do some more. So you finished that triathlon, or not triathlon, that marathon. And then you were like, I want to do more. And so at what point did you sign up for your next marathon and start that training process? Or did you just keep building off what you were currently at?
Yeah. So he has me take 2 weeks off, like completely just to rest, like the body molecularly, internally, mentally. So I take 2 weeks off of that. And then like during that 2 weeks, he was just like, well, just figure out what you want to do next. And I was like, I want to do another marathon. He's like, okay, well, just like let yourself rest, and just wait it out. And I was like, no, but I want to do a marathon. And so I looked into like the marathon 6 months out again, just so I can slowly take my time. Because as a mom to 6, like the marathon grind is a lot. Like I won't be quiet about that. Like it's a lot mentally and physically for my family to invest into that too. And I know my husband sacrifices a lot on like, especially Saturday mornings. Like he is up doing all the routine while I'm out on a long run, and he's never made me feel guilty about that. And I appreciate that of him. And so, yeah, it's a full family like obligation, So yeah, I signed up for my second marathon in June, and just slowly built my way up from January to June.
Yeah. So. And how did that one go for you?
It was night and day. It was a great experience. That's probably why I signed up for my third, because I just was like, this is so great. But yeah, I went out there. I took my whole family out this time. It was in Minnesota, so it was Grandma's Marathon, and it was a little crazy because like the weather was like it may not happen because there was like flash floods over in that area and stuff. But yeah, I ran like a 2:44, which I was really happy about, and then my family was there, which was maybe like extra appreciative. And then yeah, it was great. It was fun.
Yeah. And for those listening, like she is fast. That is a really fast time. What is your like average split like for your miles? Do you know that?
I want to say I think it's like a 6:17 or something like that, 6:17 mile pace.
Yeah. Which is freaking hauling over 26 miles. That's really wild that you're running that fast. Like you said, in your 30s after 6 kids and unlocking this new potential of yourself as an endurance athlete. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely like there's the young side of me that's like, she would be so shocked. Like we're running anything past a mile. She'd be very, very proud.
That's so awesome. That is so awesome. And so you've built this social media following over the last, I don't know, couple years.
Yeah.
Sharing your running experience, connecting with other moms. And what has that been like for you? Kind of building a community, sharing your story as a mom who is running and running really well in this season of life.
It's been so fun. Like I've definitely like, I'm not a person that's like, oh, where is my following at? Like I honestly can say like, I don't even know where it's at right now. Like I just don't look at the numbers. It's never been about the numbers for me. But I'm very grateful, like the community that I've been able to receive, like every mom wants connection. Like, I feel like the more and more moms I meet, like that's all they want is they want to bond with people that are in the same stages that they are, to know that they're not alone, you know? And so that's been the hugest blessing about this whole journey is that Instagram account of having access to other moms that are going through the grind of raising children young and still dreaming big, or, you know, maybe they're in the postpartum depression and they feel like they're isolated and they're alone in those feelings, and to be able to speak to them and be like, hey, like I was once there too. Like you're going to get through this. There's light on the other side. And you're not alone, you know? But yeah, starting the community, I started in October 2022, just simply out of accountability because I was like running sucked and everything hurt. And then it turned into just something so much more than I ever could have anticipated it would.
Yeah, it's great. And it seems like you have, you know, incredible engagement and you're creating waves in like a really positive way within the running community, but also within the mom community. And then that crossover, the like mother runner or runner mom worlds are really powerful. And we see so many women that, you know, love running because it is that bit of an escape. It's really accessible. They can take their kids, they can escape their kids. It's kind of like, it's a win either way. And I think it's a really positive activity for moms to be able to tap into. And I think you've done a really great job of showcasing that, whether they ever choose to run a marathon or not, or if they just choose to go out on like a 1 mile, you know, run, walk with their kids, it's still unlocking that kind of movement and that kind of like, I always say running is like my version of taking my brain on a walk. Like I just gotta like, it's more so for my brain to get things and process and have conversations with myself. I just got to take my brain on a walk. And that's what running is for me. It's just getting that out. But certainly not even anywhere as close to as fast as you.
No, but that's exactly what it is. And I love that like everybody can experience the same high from it, like at any pace. Like even when I wasn't hitting these paces and I was doing it like on a more fun basis, like I still had that high from it, like where I had that mental clarity and I come back just a better version of myself for my family, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. What tips do you have for a mom who's wanting to do more endurance-based training, maybe a half marathon, maybe a marathon, but also feeling guilty about the time that it does cut into like family and kids and trying to figure out that juggling relationship between your own exercise that can be time consuming, especially with endurance sports, and having a family?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably going to look different for everybody, and some people may relate to this or not, but I think for me, it's like chucking the perfection out the door the moment you decide if you're going to sign up for anything, a 5K, a 10K, a half, a marathon, whatever it may be. The faster you can chuck the perfection, the less guilt you're going to have when you drop balls on in areas of your life that you're just going to. Like, you can't do it all. And I think the moment I accepted that, like as a mom, even as a mom to 6, that like, I'm not going to have the dishes done every day. I'm not going to have my laundry is piled up in the corner. You can't see it right now. And it's out of control. And it's like, I just did that 2 days ago. I'm like, totally. I don't understand. So I think, like checking the perfection and knowing that like allowing yourself to show up messy, allowing yourself to show up, doesn't have to be perfect. Like you can show up and do half a workout and it's more than doing nothing, right? Like I hate the all or nothing mentality. And I think it's the biggest factor of why moms usually don't start is because we have such a perfectionist perspective that we feel like when we roll into it, it's like, oh, well, if I only do 10 minutes, that 10 minutes isn't going to add up. But if you do 10 minutes 4 times a week and you're doing that for a month straight, that adds up big. Like it adds up so big. And then my second tip would just start where you're at. Like I was not training for a marathon on day 1 of coming back into the running world. Like I raced 5Ks. I dabbled into a little bit of speed. I raced a couple halves. Like it wasn't just immediate. It wasn't just like I'm running a marathon. And so I think recognizing where your season's at, does your season allow you to have the time to train for a marathon, or does your season allow you to have the time to train for a 5K? Like both are so like rewarding, and it's okay to just recognize where you're at and take the steps slowly day by day or month by month of your current season. So I don't know, like that's my thing. And then, take up space, like communicate. Like if you have a spouse that you know is going to support you, but doesn't know what your goals are, like then they don't know how to help you. And that was an area where I struggled as somebody so independent. My mom grew up I had 8 siblings and she just did it all. My dad was military. He was deployed all the time. She did it all. And I literally grew up thinking that's what I have to do. I just have to do it all myself, but my husband is if I allow him to, he could be pretty useful. So I think when we allow them the opportunity to make the breakfast some mornings or, that Saturday long run, instead of pushing it at 5 a.m., say, hey, I'm going to sleep in. Can you take breakfast for the kids? And I'm going to go at 7. Like it is okay for you to take up space as much as your other members of your family, if you're able to, Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And sometimes I do need it spelled out. Like, hey, this is like what I would really like to do. Are you good with this? Yeah, you got it? Okay, cool. Because they can't always read our minds or anticipate what we want. And we want them to be there. That's just, I think that ability to say I need this and I will be a better version of me if I'm able to do this. And then everyone benefits. The whole family benefits. If we are taken care of as the mothers and the wives or whoever, everyone around us will benefit from us investing in ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. Well, Shanna, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience as a mom, as an athlete, as a runner. It's all so incredibly valuable. And I know there's a lot of people that really needed to hear your voice today and your experiences. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's been awesome. It's fun to talk to another mom. So
I got you. Where can people find more about you and follow you?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram account. It's just motherhood_running. You're welcome. DM me. I do Monday shout outs, Metal Monday shout outs. You don't even have to be a runner. You could lift or you can swim and I will shout you out. So
that's so awesome. Well, I love what you've created. I love what you're doing. And we are definitely cheering you on with all the things that are ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practice Brave podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review and help us spread the work we are doing to improve the overall information and messaging in the fitness industry and beyond. Now, if you are pregnant and you are looking for a trustworthy exercise program to follow, I have you covered. The Pregnant Athlete Training Program is a well-rounded program for pregnancy with workouts for each week that are appropriate for your changing body. That's 36 weeks of workouts, 3 to 4 workouts each week, and tons of guidance on exercise strategy. We also have an at-home version of that program. If you are postpartum and you're looking for an exercise program to follow, the 8-week Postpartum Athlete Training Program would be a really great way to help bridge the gap between rehab and the fitness you actually want to do. From there, we have the Practice Brave Fitness Program, which is an ongoing strength and conditioning program where you get new workouts each week and have a lot of guidance from myself and my co-coach, Heather Osby. This is the only way that I'm really offering ongoing coaching at this point in time. If you have ever considered becoming a certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, I would love to have you join us. Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism is a self-paced online certification course that will up-level your coaching skills and help connect the dots between pelvic health and long-term athletic performance, especially during pregnancy and postpartum. Become who you needed and become who your online and local community needs by becoming a certified pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach. Thank you again for listening to the Practice Brave podcast. I appreciate you. And please help me continue spreading this messaging, this information, and this work.